straight
But listen, my thing is not about Mike. Mike is solidified.
One more point.
LeBron has gotten there in years where he was never supposed to get there.
When Joe Budden is saying this is a tactic that LeBron James fanboys, apologists, do. They want to have this as a built-in defensive mechanism of why he loses, because it serves as an excuse to why he loses and justifies why getting to the finals is more important than winning it. It doesn't have any substantial empirical evidence to making it him the GOAT. It's just something they like to say as a defensive mechanism. Has no validity to it at all.
And I hear you talk about his finals losses often. But I think that matters. Number one,
I don't blame him for losing the first one to San Antonio. That wasn't his fault. It's a miracle he got them to the finals. He made me get mad respect for that.
Transparent losses. See, these are losses that didn't really happen because of the circumstances of what he was facing. It doesn't account in the history books because he went against too many tough teams. That sounds like an excuse building mechanism. It's no different from getting to the finals is more impressive than winning it, because it serves as a defense mechanism of why he has those losses, instead of looking at it with context, which these guys won't do. They'll look at it with hypotheticals.
And the last time they lost to San Antonio, I don't blame him for that, because D Wade was hurt and you needed D Wade, and D Wade's knees was shot. I don't blame LeBron for that.
It's not about being blamed, as Stephen A. said there. It's just the excuses are arbitrary, because if LeBron James were to win those championships, and I'm playing them at their own game, the hypotheticals, then he would get all the credit and he would be regarded as the greatest of all time, because he beat those teams with those players that had those superstar names on them, instead of actually going to Basketball Reference and actually looking at how those Cleveland Cavaliers stack, which they were top 3 and top 4 in offensive ratings. So you got to have context when you discuss these things.
How many finals you been to?
Not a goddamn one.
What about you? Why didn't you go?
Hard.
This is why this argument and this conversation of LeBron James being the GOAT isn't really a conversation for me, or even close, because there's too many concessions, too many excuses, and too much coddling for this man to be the GOAT. It's always a thing or some arbitrary statement that has nothing to do with the performance on the court that excludes that for LeBron James to be the GOAT. It's always some arbitrary thing. Like, the reason that Rich Paul says he's the GOAT is because it's hard to get there. Let's use that as a reference point. If it's hard to get there, wouldn't it be just as hard as winning it? It's just easy just to diffuse the arguments with stuff like that. And a lot of detractors will say, well, you're just a Jordan fanboy. That's another argument that they like to run. Well, in this picture, my favorite player is in here, and it's not Michael Jordan. It's Allen Iverson. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because they will use their feelings about LeBron James to dictate what is correct and what is factual. Your feelings have nothing to do with empirical factual evidence. It doesn't care if it says it's right or wrong. It's about what the facts say. It's not about what your feelings say. And another thing they need to stop doing is stop trying to make the level of competition as an excuse for LeBron James, or a reason, or a built-in defensive mechanism of why he couldn't win. Because if he's the guy that gets that free pass, let's give it to Jerry West. Let's give it to every other opponent that went against a tough opponent. Give it to Charles Barkley. Give it to John Stockton and Karl Malone. Give it to Jerry West, who's lost a lot of finals to an historic Celtics team that had Russell and Cousy on it. So if LeBron James is awarded that to have excuses, shouldn't these other Hall of Fame players get that free pass as well? Why aren't they held to that standard? I'll tell you why. Because it's a narrative. It's a way of moving the goalposts for LeBron James to be in this conversation with Michael Jordan. It is not close, and it will never be close. They just use bad logic to make it seem like it's close.